Yesterday was Tuesday, which makes today it's another big news Wednesday with Jayar Jackson. Jayar, you're just like on every Wednesday now. Things are back to normal, kind of.
It feels comfortable again, you know? I feel like I need to expand and say more things. I just spoke for an hour straight. Waz was on, it was good times. Maybe I didn't speak for the whole hour, but it's good to settle in with you guys again. I miss this feeling.
Exactly, and now you don't have to lead, you can just relax. It's just a nice relaxing Wednesday, as so many are. But anyway, we're glad to have you here. And to the audience, we're glad to have you here as well, because we got a lot that we got to talk about. Not only the latest coming out of Uvalde, the cops apparently are taking their ball and going home. They've heard your criticisms and they don't like them and they'd like to not hear them anymore. We've got that for you. We've got the final days of straight people. We're in the last straight. That's what I'm gonna call the movie. There's in a couple more generations, there's not gonna be more straight people. So we're gonna talk about that. What a fun way to start off Pride is people implying that being gay is like a virus and eventually everyone's going to be infected. So that's cool. But anyway, congrats. You know, Pride is happening. Everyone get hyped. We're actually gonna be doing our Pride celebration later on tonight, which is gonna be great. And we got a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about, including, by the way, there you go. Our Pride special that we do every year is happening tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'm gonna be leading the first hour. Right off the bat, Laverne Cox is gonna be joining us and a bunch of other awesome guests, as well as awesome people from TYT. 2 awesome hours of that special, so stay tuned for that. Also, we've got a great political ad to show you, a controversial political ad. We like bold ads, we've got one for you. And along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button so people know that the stream is live, that would be great. And if you wanna send us any comments, tweets, super chats and all that, we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Jayar, are you ready to talk about some news?
I'm ready. Can I say one thing about the Pride Month celebration you guys are doing? My wife and kid and I, we were in Palm Springs maybe a couple months ago, and we stumbled across a Pride celebration that was happening the whole weekend. Quite possibly the most festive, fun, positive energy within an entire city that I've ever been involved in my life. And we didn't know it was gonna be there. We didn't plan anything, but we were just at downtown Palm Springs shopping. We're like, oh man, there's a lot of folks here. And it was pretty obvious what was happening. I'm really trying to find out who can hate and dislike folks that are simply trying to just exist happily. It's amazing.
There's a lot of people that is. People love to hate, man. The world's full of haters. I don't know. Really fast, I saw a Reddit thread and someone was like, man, the title was, it's great to be a nerd these days. And the post was, man, we got new Stranger Things. We got Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We got Marvel, we got all this stuff. And like a bunch of people were like, that's all mainstream garbage. That's not being a nerd. None of that is good. You seem nice. I want to hang out with you. It was like this many things, movies, like any of that. Man, your life sucks. Anyway,
absolutely.
God, you know what? I guess I'm mainstream and lame because you know what? I can sit down with my popcorn and enjoy all that stuff. Stranger Things has been a delight so far. Like, I wish I could be like you and just be like, this isn't good and this isn't good. I don't like anything. Anyway,
I feel you, John. There's many things I don't like either. You know what I do? I turn the channel.
Yeah, there are so many things that I don't watch. It doesn't really bother me, honestly. Anyway, with that said, we've got very serious stuff to talk about, arguably as serious as whether this nerd stuff is mainstream or not. So with that, let's jump into this video.
So I want to talk to you about your decision and what the DPS director said.
How's it going?
Good, I'm Pete. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I want to talk to you about the decision and what
Department we're doing, but just to let y'all know, and I just spoke with him.
I know you did. But
you're not blocking me, are you?
No. Turn this way.
No, just so you all know. Just so you all know, obviously, we're not going to release anything. We have people in our community being buried, so we're going to be respectful.
I just want your reaction
we're going to be
the director McGraw saying that you were responsible for the decision
We're
to go into that room. How do you explain yourself to the
We're going to be
parents?
respectful to the family.
I understand that, but you have an opportunity to explain yourself to the parents.
And just so you know, we're going to do that eventually, obviously. And whenever this is done, and let the families quit grieving, then we'll do that, obviously. And just so everybody knows, we've been in contact with DPS every day. Just so you all know.
They say
every day.
They say that you're not cooperating.
I've been on the phone with them every day.
They say you're not cooperating. So just 2 seconds.
Just so you know, we've been talking to them every day.
What is your reaction?
Y'all have a good day.
What is your reaction, sir?
That is the police chief, Pete Arredondo, who, according to one of the most recent news cycles, which change every day, was the man in charge who made the decision to not send in the cops to save the kids in that school shooting, even though all of their training documents, because they are well trained, well funded, well prepped in terms of equipment, they've done training for these specific things. All those documents say if you are a single cop and you show up there, you go in and you save them. So they didn't do that. The whole group didn't do their training, apparently because of that individual. And it's now been about a week, and they have received a lot of criticism for what they did, and more importantly, didn't do while that shooting was going on, and all the lies that have been told since then, which we're gonna go through. And Jayar, he seemed very inconvenienced by the fact that CNN dared to talk to him, the condescending pat on the shoulder, the continually hiding behind, well, I mean, I can't answer any questions about what we did because people are grieving. No, dude, they want answers too. Maybe especially they want answers. The fact that you are not gonna answer questions about what you did, what orders you gave, by hiding behind the grieving parents who are the product of those decisions is pretty disgusting.
And the fact that he can't see that irony, or at least look for a way to make himself look better in this situation, you have to be prepared to go for this. Maybe even say, yep, I made that bad decision. And maybe as the investigation goes, we'll see. From what I'm telling now, these people need training in how to take responsibility, no matter how bad the consequences will be. This is something that we're supposed to teach our kids to be able to do. But instead, this guy says, you're gonna block my way. I'm trying to walk in, we're doing nothing else. Well, two of the sentences he said there, he said, we're gonna be respectful to the families. Yeah. By not talking about what happened to their children and their family members, we're gonna be respectful to the families. And also, when the families stop grieving, then we'll give these informations to talk about and do that, investigate this. When are the families gonna stop grieving? They're actually probably never going to stop grieving. Would you stop grieving after your 10-year-old was murdered in the way that it was, and that they probably were? And then you have to go through this funeral arrangements, and then the actual funeral itself, and then everyone talking about what they're not gonna do in response to it. When will that grieving stop? Is there an end date to grieving? Is it 2.5 months? Is it a year? Or is it just long enough for us to stop bugging you about this? That's how long it takes.
It ain't when the parents are gonna stop grieving, it's when the reporters are gonna stop pestering. That's all it is. Like, and look, I'm gonna exercise a little bit of empathy, play a little bit of devil's advocate. I can appreciate how that police chief, he must really be shocked that you guys are still asking questions about this. Like, that was a whole week ago. And people still want answers about why we left the shooter in there with a bunch of kids who are desperately calling to get help. Stop asking, just move on. And by the way, the police department looks like, at least according to the reports, it kind of has moved on. According to ABC News, the Uvalde Police Department and the Uvalde Independent School District Police Force are no longer cooperating with the Texas Department of Public Safety's investigation into the massacre and the state's review of the law enforcement responses, according to multiple law enforcement sources. Police chief and a spokesperson for the Uvalde Independent School District did not immediately respond to requests for comment, which, look, sometimes you need to know what a group is thinking. So you'll reach out to the police department, you need to know what they're thinking. But if what you're getting them to comment on is, are you guys not cooperating anymore? And they don't respond, they kind of responded then. Kind of feels like you're not cooperating if you won't even respond to like immediate requests to like, hey, do you have anything to say? Then you're probably not working with them here. But anyway, according to sources, the decision to not cooperate occurred soon after the director of DPS, Colonel Stephen McCraw, held a news conference back on Friday, during which he said the delayed police entry to the classroom was the wrong decision. They apparently didn't like that. The police chief in particular seems to have not liked that since he's the one in charge. But they say the Uvalde Police Department and Uvalde CISD police have been cooperating with investigators. The chief provided an initial interview, but has not responded to a request for a follow-up interview at the Texas Rangers that was made 2 days ago. So no, we're totally are responding. Initially, before I realized I should be running as fast as I can, I did briefly talk to someone, and now they're trying to talk to me, and days have gone by, and I haven't responded, and yet somehow that still counts as cooperating, Jayar.
I think maybe this shows why these decisions were made, because that's really the question that wants to get asked. If you're willing to take the heat and the responsibility for these decisions, when someone comes in and asks, you can say, okay, let's talk about it. I made this decision for that reason. I was thinking this way. And you know those are gonna be bad reasons and you don't really wanna say it. But if you had that forethought to think about how we need to protect folks, and actually our job is to do something as far as protecting these folks, and we didn't do it, I think if he had that forethought, maybe he wouldn't even have done it in the first place. This just continues with this same conscious flow of, I'm supposed to detach myself from this. I'm supposed to not take responsibility. And now let's not even cooperate, because the objective now is not to get the answers or even to own up to what you did wrong. It is to get away from the problem. It's full court press, avoid, run away, hope they stop talking about it. That's one of those things that just isn't gonna work out anymore. And I'm surprised that it ever did. But maybe we're waking up. Maybe that's why they don't like the term woke, because people are better asleep and letting people like this just run off and say, yeah, we're not gonna cooperate. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk about what I did wrong. Good luck burying your children.
Yeah, geez. I mean, we'll see. Anyway, I wanted to let people know about, we talked about the fact that they're not cooperating. One of the reasons we need their cooperation is to understand why they give us so much information that wasn't accurate. So recently we found out that the idea that the school door was left open, that wasn't true. It apparently didn't lock, but it had been shut. State police initially said that a teacher had propped it open, and when they put that out, they didn't say, so they're responsible. But that's kind of the message you're seeming to send. Turns out that's not true. The teacher did close the door. It just didn't lock as it was supposed to. And so that turns out not to have been true. And that's just the latest in a number of different things where law enforcement and state officials have struggled to present an accurate timeline and details of the event. They've given conflicting information. They've withdrawn statements just hours after giving them. Now they say some accounts were preliminary and may change as more witnesses are interviewed. It has been a week. I'll just tell you, I feel like you could talk to these people relatively quickly. And so the door, was it propped open or was it not? Okay, maybe seems like a small detail, but if the implication is that the teachers are responsible, maybe make sure before you put it out there. The idea that they engaged the shooter outside of the school. The idea of how long he was outside before going in. That number kept going up until eventually it hit 12 minutes. Then how long he was on the inside. That number kept ballooning until it was well past an hour. The idea that they didn't think they needed to go in because they didn't think there was any danger, directly contradicted by the continuing phone call, now actual audio of phone calls coming out of the kids saying, you've got to save us. And so Jayar, like there can be no faith, no trust. And the idea that it's just up to this guy, maybe we'll get a statement from him. If a reporter catches him between his car and the building, maybe he'll respond to the Texas Rangers phone call at some point. How is he not you need to hold him. We need answers. It shouldn't be if this guy if he's feeling cooperative, we should get them. Did he make a decision that resulted in multiple deaths? Did he cover it up immediately after to save his ass and the asses of other cops? Is that what he did? We're talking about potential crimes, and he seems inconvenienced by the fact that he had to briefly give a statement before walking into a meeting.
John, what you're forgetting is that police officers are above the law. They don't have to answer to investigations. If it is something that leads towards criminal accusations, they don't have to talk about it. They're cops. That's part of the appeal of becoming a cop. Again, I've said it several times. I think it was up in Delaware or New Hampshire's Northeast state. One of the appealing parts about, there was an ad out recruiting cops. And one of the appealing parts of this ad is you're selling the job was you got qualified immunity. So whatever you do, you're off the hook, bro. What type of people does that type of post attract? People who don't like taking responsibilities for their actions, but definitely like doing other stuff that comes with the job, like playing with all the toys and potentially going after the bad guys. Unless the bad guys have a really big gun and armored and body armor to stop you from stopping them. Then, I didn't sign up for this. One more thing. He talked about that side door entrance that was left unlocked or open or whichever one they're talking about, and the teacher's potentially responsible, which is what they hinted at. Lauren Windsor, old friend of the show, she went to the NRA conference over the weekend, and she snuck in a side door at the NRA conference and walked right by all security, went into some VIP area, and then took pictures and talked about how she got in so easily.
Yeah.
What she didn't do was walk in with a big old gun, because they didn't allow those. Yeah. Weird how that works. So the side door can be open at this school, but if somebody's not walking in with a huge gun and starts unloading on everyone, he walked into the school, just like Lauren Windsor walked into the NRA conference.
Exactly.
Side doors can be left open by negligent people all the time. But then what happens once the person who's looking to commit harm then walks in with?
Yeah, 100%. And look, all of what we're covering, all of what you're saying, what we're responding to is all important. And we need answers to all of this, definitely. At the same time, I can't help but feel a little bit uncomfortable about the fact that we have been put in a position where we need to focus on this stuff. Because while it is, on the one hand, very important, whether doors aren't locking that should, or whether cops are being given bad orders, that these are only like the explanations for why things happened with an unacceptable status quo. The solution to our problems fundamentally is not doors that lock accurately, and it's not cops that don't get scared at the last minute. It's the kid not having the AR-15. My dream world is not a kid with an AR-15 desperately hoping to kill his classmates who can't open the door briefly. That is not paradise, okay? Because there are windows and there are other doors, there are ways to get into a building. It is not literally a castle or a prison. And like the cops going in 20 minutes earlier, 30 minutes earlier, still leaves you with lots of dead kids. Like, and again, so we have to focus on this stuff. But also, I don't like focusing on this stuff because better, more responsive, braver cops are not gonna save us. More accurate, durable, like more durable doors or more trustworthy, reliable doors are not gonna save us. Kids not having access to weapons where they can gun down dozens of other kids, that is the solution to this problem. And I hate that we've been backed into a position where we are fighting this battle on their turf. Because in fighting for cops to have not made these mistakes, we are implying that cops are the solution. And yes, we do need them at the end of the day, considering the fact that there are guns everywhere to go in, but the gun shouldn't be there in the first place.
I got a lot of people mad at me yesterday for saying that the guns are this problem. And then part of it was like, look at these coward cops. This was the pushback. Look at these coward cops. We can't depend on cops. That's why we need even more guns. Mm-hmm. So you would agree, since you hate the cops now, defund the police? Isn't it a waste of money? Mm-hmm. Right? Suddenly you sound like a lib that you hated from a couple summers ago. Suddenly you're woke. Weird how guns will suddenly make you woke, huh? Or your desire to keep and hoard as many as possible is what make you suddenly hate the police. It's weird how these folks turn on police every 5 minutes.
Yeah. And you're right, they're turning on them. They're making the argument that no, look, it is totally fine for cops to routinely go up against people that have like devastatingly, terrifyingly deadly weapons. I love cops. Cops are the best, and they should be able to be gunned down by the dozens if a guy has a couple $1,000s and buys the right rifle. That is a really weird position. It's not a position that I have. If you're a cop and you're watching this, why doesn't that bother you? Why doesn't it bother you that they want them to have high-powered rifles with large magazines filled with bullets that can penetrate your body armor? Is that your friend? Is that your ally? It seems like an enemy, honestly. And I get that I'm an enemy because I'm, a bleeding heart lib or whatever, but I don't want you to be gunned down.
Anyway, how dare you, John?
I know, I'm the worst. Now, really fast, just because I want people to stay focused on the actual issue, which is not doors or cops or man traps or whatever they want to talk about. Chris Murphy had a good tweet, said, FYI, this isn't stopping. There have been 18 mass shootings since Uvalde. Remember, we were speculating when doing our initial coverage. how many there would be by the next week. Well, there's been 18. You need to know something. You need to know this because it's not going to stop until we do something. Here's just a sampling of the slaughter. I'm not going to read all of them because, as we often say on the show, if we were to cover all of the terrible acts of gun violence, that's the only thing that the show would be. But Chris Murphy said last night 10 people were shot at an outdoor party in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. 4 people are in critical condition. A pregnant woman was one of the victims. 10 people. Didn't hear about this one, did you? And I say to Chris Murphy, yep, no, I had not actually heard about that one. 10 people were shot, including a pregnant woman. And I, a person who's always looking at the news and I'm always on social media, I didn't hear anything about that. Kind of a sick country we've got here, Jayar.
These are the ones that we're supposed to ignore. These are the ones that are just that's normal things. But where'd you say that happened again?
That was in downtown Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, you mean it wasn't Chicago, LA, and New York? You mean the way everybody keeps talking? Well, how about those gun deaths in Chicago? If you just take away what's happening in Chicago and LA and New York, we don't have a gun problem. The problem is Chicago, LA, and New York are in America.
Yep.
Let's just change that. Oh, let's have another hypothetical. If we didn't have idiots like you pushing this, we wouldn't have the problem. Let's just eliminate the bad parts about this entire argument. Sure, okay. It happens in every city. It happens in every city. Uvalde is not Chicago. Jesus.
How long are they gonna let the chief just, I got stuff to do. I gotta go, right? Like, and people mentioned, we breezed over it. So you don't have to bring up the graphic if you don't want to, but he was sworn into the city council. So he won an election earlier this month. And it looks pretty bad that while he's dodging the Texas Rangers and reporters, he's like, I got a new position. I'm in government because I've proven that I'm responsible and you can trust me with power. But they did it. They did a little secret swearing in because he had to do this. He had nothing else to take up his time. There was nothing keeping him busy. So of course he could be sworn into the city council.
They just want you to think that all of a sudden the entire population is steadily turning gay or turning trans, just generation. Probably in about 4 or 5 generations, no one will be straight anymore. Everyone will be either gay or trans or non-conforming or whatever the list of 50 or 60 different options there are.
Well, in your mind, where's that last generation coming from? I don't even understand what she thinks of the science there, but apparently, Jayar, as we launch into Pride, there are they that want you to believe that everyone is gay. And I don't know what is the conspiracy theory here? That they want you to think that everyone's gay, which is not true in her mind. No, almost nobody is gay, but they want you to think that they're all gay. Or is it that they want you to think that they're gay and they are actually turning everyone gay? That people are being, against their will, converted into being gay or bisexual or polyamorous or asexual, or I don't know, I had a conversation with the wrong person and now I'm trans. Is that the conspiracy theory? I really shouldn't have had that conversation because now I gotta rethink everything. I don't know what the conspiracy theory here is.
Yeah, the conspiracy theories don't know what the conspiracy theory is. They're battling. They're having a bit of a war here over whether or not gay folks or anyone within any part about this are real, or if they're fake, or if they've been convinced and have a mental condition where they think they're gay, but they're actually not. But it's only because they were told by their politicians that they are. What about, there's religious leaders that are gay and they closet it and they hide it. What happened to them? Was God not speaking loud enough in their ear? What was the problem that happened? What about these folks, these pedophiles throughout the Catholic Church who raped all these little boys? What are they? What drove them to that? If anything, we could actually acknowledge that what drove them to that maybe was the fact that they feel that they can't actually show who they are out of fear of being ostracized within our community. So they do these things in secret and they get worse and worse and more devastating and destructive and ruin other people's lives. For some reason, those things don't matter. What matters is that we need to push this political agenda to say that everyone else, if you're not on my side of the political aisle, is forcing people to become gay. And oh my God, we're gonna be extinct soon. Hey, I got news for you, Marjorie. We're gonna die anyway. So whoever anyone likes, loves, lives with, marries has nothing to do whether or not you will die one day. And after that, whatever people are left behind you have nothing to do with the stupid things that you said the whole time that you were here. It doesn't have to make sense, John. It has to scare people. There's this new nugget in these people's heads now that goes, oh my God, the gays are gonna take over.
Yeah,
That's the fear.
But JR, you are right that yes, at some point we will all die. But think about that. Many years from now, you're laying on your deathbed thinking, there's a list of 50 orientations. It pisses me off. Like, why does that bother them? I do not understand why that bothers them so much. First of all, I don't think there are 50, but let's say that there's 50. And let's say that you don't understand all the distinctions. Who cares? Like, I don't know every single one of the distinctions between all orientations across all societies and all time. Okay, why do you have to? Why do you feel like you have to? Like, I don't understand. They just go out of their way to find things to be bothered by. When life is easy for these rich people, and Marjorie, don't forget it, she is rich. She was given a business, she's incredibly wealthy. They just go looking for things to be bothered by. And not just to be bothered by, to be incredibly aggressive towards. People in the comments have been mentioning gay replacement theory. No, but that's why we're talking about this. I had Jason Stanley on to be interviewed. Yes, I interviewed him about great replacement theory, and we talked about how this is kind of an offshoot of that. The idea that you're not just being replaced by scary brown people from El Salvador, you're also being replaced by a bisexual version of you, I guess. You won't be you anymore when suddenly you're queer. That's how they're trying to scare them. And they want you to be aggressive about it. I will remind people of something we talked about back in the day. Marjorie Greene was talking with, I think it might have been Alex Jones. I think it was actually on InfoWars. And she was talking about the story where non-binary counselors were sleeping in the same cabin as schoolgirls. She said that's evil and her husband would have attacked them. Well, first off, my husband would have beat him into the ground and then he'd be in jail. But this is exactly how we need to stand up against this stuff. She said, simply being in the room, her husband, a grown man, would have beaten a young camp counselor, and that's good. That is how we should respond to this. If there's someone who's near your kid, you should attack them, even if it means going to jail. That's what she said. Now, in a second, we're gonna move on to the actual numbers and we're gonna dive into a little bit of what might be terrifying her. But inevitably, Jayar, this does go to calls for violence.
Every time, and the way they continue to repeat this every time, it's repurposed bigotry. We've seen it over and over again. That's why they can then translate it onto like you talking about the gay replacement theory. When originally it was the Jews are coming to get us. Now, before that, there was we can't have interracial marriage because that's against God's will. The word of God says no, we can't have that because you can't mix the races because that'll destroy humanity. Now we can't allow to acknowledge the existence of gay folks, which by the way. Different from what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, gay people have always existed. They were just afraid to say so. What they have a problem with is people being comfortable with who they are and announcing it and being like, you know what, I'm gonna live openly and freely. That's the problem, not the fact that, oh my God, they're suddenly popping up out of nowhere. So this repurposed bigotry from marriage to existence to acknowledging who they are and understanding it is something that they can always go back to because violence is always the answer afterwards. We dealt with violence when it comes to those other targeted groups. We just change the targeted group and push the violence back on them again, or at least try to intimidate them back into the shadows so that they can't speak and say who they are.
Yeah, and I will remind people, by the way, what she said, her stupid, like in 4 generations, there'll be no straight people anymore. Like, I know most people watching this are smart. They don't watch Bill Maher. That is exactly the jokey argument Bill Maher made a few weeks ago. He had that chart, remember? The chart of the identification going up. Why are they all of a sudden LGBT? It's just trendy. Well, first of all, let's say that your stupid idea is right. And all of these kids are deluding themselves. And some sophomore girl thinks she's a lesbian. Why do you care about that? Why is that a thing? You know what? She'll figure it out. She'll figure it out eventually and she'll be okay. What if some kid thinks he's asexual? Why does that bother you? It's so weird that you're like 90 years old, Bill Maher. Why does it bother you so much that someone could briefly get their sexuality wrong? I don't know what that would mean, but let's say that it was true, that you could be wrong about it. It'll be okay, we'll figure it out. And here are the actual numbers. Here is what is actually terrifying them. So according to a Gallup poll, 5.6% of United States adults identify as LGBT. That is up from 4.5% back in 2017 It's up from 3.5% in 2017. They also have numbers for breaking down what different identity people have, what orientation specifically they identify as. But let's jump to the thing that's terrifying, and that is this next graphic, graphic 4. The generational group that has the highest percentage of people who identify as LGBT is the youngest Generation Z. That's 15.9%. It's 9.1% for millennials, 3.8% for Gen X, 2% for baby boomers, 1.3% of traditionalists. Now, you can choose to think that it is 10 times more common to be gay, bisexual, lesbian, transgender, queer, whatever, all those different identities. Or you can think for 2 or 3 contiguous seconds about what it was like to identify that way back in. So for the traditionalists, 1.3%, born before 1946. I don't know a ton about what it was like to grow up in the 40s or the 50s. I have watched Back to the Future, and that's about where my knowledge ends. I have a feeling it was probably pretty rough to have any of these identities. And I'm just judging that based on how people from that generation treat the LGBTQ community right now, literally. So is it possible that it is just more socially acceptable? Like that they are allowed to have the identity that they always had but couldn't say? Is that a potential explanation, Jayar?
Sure. I mean, again, that would make sense, John. They'd have to think further than hatred and trying to score some kind of points to build this coalition of people that hate along with them. I don't really fully believe that these folks, now that the followers do, because those are the folks that they've convinced, but people in these positions of power, they don't really believe this stuff. That's what makes it so insidious. They're actually activating people. Now maybe some do, maybe I'm overblowing it, because someone like, as soon as I pictured Marjorie Taylor Greene knowing something that other folks don't know, that eliminated my theory altogether. She's part of it as well, but there's enough people that understand and know that this is just people. But they're like, how can we use this to further my influence? Gain more power, anger more people, just because I think that I think a lot of ways that people interact are very ew. I don't see it, so who cares? You know, I have a news flash for people like Marjorie Taylor Greene right now. There's a gay couple right now kissing. And you can't see them, and they're still kissing. And you know what's happened to your life? You're going right along and still doing the same stupid stuff that you do every day. It doesn't affect you. What does that have to do with you? Literally, we're starting wars and killing people over who they are attracted to and who they want to be with. Think about how simple of a thing that is. And we are up in arms over it. Full political disagreements and legislation over this. Yeah. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
If you stop and think about it, it's the dumbest thing to argue about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and if you're a conservative watching this and it makes sense to you, yeah, no, this is what I should focus on. I mean, sure, I'm gonna lose my home and I won't be able to retire and I have no health insurance, but this is what I should retire. I think rich ass Marjorie Greene is being genuine when she obsesses over this stuff. Citizens of South Dakota might soon have legal marijuana at last, but there's a bit of a catch, or at least a potential stumbling block on the way to getting it legalized. And that is something called Amendment C. So let's talk about this. On Tuesday, I guess, was that yesterday? Okay, let's check to see the results of that. Maybe it's next Tuesday. Voters will decide whether to approve Amendment C, a proposed change to the state's constitution that would require most ballot measures to win 60% of the vote in order to pass, rather than just a majority. So Amendment C was passed by the legislature this year. It still has to be approved by the people. It would single out ballot measures that raise taxes and fees or that require spending more than $10 million over 5 fiscal years. What they're calling a low threshold. Yes, anything that is going to affect the entire state of South Dakota over the course of 5 years is going to cost $10 million. And if it doesn't cost $10 million, it ain't worth thinking about. So everything effectively would have to get 60%. So why are they doing this? Well, think about it. We have something similar to this here in California, where stuff that's going to raise taxes has to have a higher threshold. That may seem neutral or objective. It's just, well, I mean, we're not saying conservative stuff or liberal stuff, but think about the effect. What are they there to do in the state legislature? You might think solve problems, debate the topics of the day, but what if it was to protect the status quo? And what if the status quo, above all else, doesn't want money to be spent doesn't want their taxes to go up, and doesn't love the idea that a simple majority could actually get this done. And think about how much work it already takes to get a ballot measure passed, to get it on, to get people to get past the fact that almost always the other side is gonna have so much money, corporations are gonna put so much money in advertising. Well now, we're seeing in a lot of states, especially on the issue of weed, people are actually passing it with the majority of the vote. So now you just jack it up to 60%. It's so fundamentally undemocratic, Jayar.
Well, that's the whole idea. Well, once you see that the democracy that you like to praise and talk about so much no longer works just for you or what you figured the population would agree with you on, it's time to change democracy. They did it before. I believe it was North Carolina when a Democratic governor came in, and before he got a chance to actually take power, they stripped him of multiple layers of his power. Like, oh, so someone got elected, let's go ahead and negate that whole election thing. Hey, so our citizens, we never thought in South Dakota, our citizens may be on the verge of passing something like this. How about we eliminate their voice right away before they get a chance to? Does that sound like America to you? Does that sound like the things we always preach about and how we're better than other countries and how we let the people, we're ruled by the people, we the people? Or is it just a few people who are making these decisions because that's what benefits their power, their money, their positions, their way of telling us what it is that we want to do? It's amazing, but we're gonna sit back and continue to take this. I mean, honestly, I honestly don't know what our recourse could be when it comes to something like this, or even how many people are paying enough attention to this. I hadn't heard about this. How many people pay enough attention to this where it will change, and they're banking on that? It's just, it's a part of the process.
There are so many obstacles to, like, if you actually get past all the baked in obstacles about people being busy, not necessarily having time to put a lot of time and attention and thought into all these issues. So for instance, if everybody votes and they pass, something allowing, for instance, former felons to vote in Florida, and then the state legislature makes it effectively impossible legally to do so. Oh, sure, you passed your ballot measure, but we're gonna add all these extra steps. Then ideally, people should vote them out of office. When, for instance, I forget what the state, I apologize, maybe somebody in the chat can tell me, they had some new anti-corruption ballot measure to stop them from getting gifts and money and stuff like that. And the legislature just overruled it. Throw them all out. Like, but we either don't or we can't, because while something might pass at the state level with 52% of the vote, going in and actually getting each individual district to vote but like you should. They have shown that they don't give a damn about what you think. But unfortunately, those repercussions don't come, and they can hide it so easily. So this guy Tim Goodwin, who's one of the Amendment C's prime sponsors, says this will make it harder for outside special interest groups to raise our fees and taxes using ballot measures, thus making it harder to grow government through ballot. To grow government or do something, to do anything via government, it's harder for the outside special interest to raise our taxes. Yes, because a whole bunch of teachers unions from Massachusetts just want South Dakotans' taxes to go up. No, what he means is we want to keep government just large enough to protect the wealthy from any assault against their economic dominance. That's all they want, that's all they need, that's all the funding needs to be for. And so raising money to deal with climate change or whatever, like, we're not interested in that, because then taxes would have to go up, and I don't want my taxes to go up. And so I know, and here I'm playing a fictional Republican, I know that we can't actually convince the majority on almost any of these issues. It's why Republicans have basically almost never gotten a majority vote for their presidential candidate over the last 30 years. So we just add obstacles. I can't convince you, but I don't have to if 50% of you can't actually get done literally anything. And so whether it's through gerrymandering, the Electoral College, things like this, all of this, it is just designed to stop government from actually functioning.
Isn't it weird how our democracy runs in this way that people, like you mentioned, the minority of the party that gets voted into these offices, fine, let's do it like it's a sporting event, since that's what we like to think of in this country. At halftime, if you're down 28-3 of a football game, and you go, well, guys, we have to make it even because the Republican team just sucks and no one really roots for them. Okay. So you guys automatically get 21 more points, and at least come out in the next half and you have a chance to win now. Why is that fair? Because other team actually has things that they say and do that appeal to folks and score points? Let's take away those points and give them to the losers because the losers are so bad and no one likes them. Why does that make sense in the freest country in the world, especially when it comes to things that actually affect people? So it's way more important, even though we take sports as the utmost importance here. It's actually something that does affect people's lives. And we do it based off of absolutely nothing. It's gotten worse and worse. That's why you see all these conspiracy theories and people talking about who's coming for what. And did you know that these people, their blood's dripping from their teeth and they're grooming your children? It's all these basic things that people are normally doing, but it's challenging their bad ideas and their bad positions. So therefore, they got to demonize you and level the playing field to their loser status. That's why we're headed in a negative direction, because we're appealing to the most negative people in our country.
Why do you require Satanists? Why does the indisputable fact that the rich control everything and they bought our government, why isn't that a good enough theory? Why isn't that good enough for you? It's true. Is that what makes it not appealing? Anyway, with that said, we are gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna get to some more stories, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this. Sean Greenberg's been a member for 18 months, says, have an idea, less guns, more beer. I like it. How about that's the buyback? You turn in an AR, you get unlimited Budweiser 1 year. Anywhere you go, you have a card, it's from the government. It's just got a picture of you like this and a beer, and you can get beer wherever you go. I'd be perfectly fine with that. It costs a little bit of money. I don't mind my taxes going up.
John, you need a beer advisor.
Everybody.
Sorry, John, you need a beer advisor. If we're gonna start doing beer buybacks for guns, Budweiser, all Budweiser is gonna do is make people want to go out and get more weapons, because that's maybe Budweiser.
I don't drink it.
Sponsor it's one disgusting. Day. So I don't want to finish that sentence because I don't want to disparage a potential.
Okay, that's true. Look, I really like Bud Light. I drink Bud Light. That's like my light, cheap beer. I've also tried, have you had Bud Zero? It's their 0 carb beer. I am not totally sure that it's not just water. I think it's beer how like LaCroix is fruit juice. like it's sort of. I can drink endless amounts of that and never get even tipsy, by the way. I think it's water. I think that they're selling water.
They call it O'Doul's is what they call it.
Exactly. I think O'Doul's has more alcohol in it. Anyway, with that said, why don't we get into something exciting? We are big fans here of bold political ads that can break through the political conversation to get people to rethink a race. Charles Booker, the candidate that you're seeing right there, is running in Kentucky as a Democratic. He's the nominee for Senate to go up against Rand Paul. I think he's on to something here. Take a look at this.
The pain of our past persists to this day. In Kentucky, like many states throughout the South, lynching was a tool of terror. It was used to kill hopes for freedom. It was used to kill my ancestors. Now, in a historic victory for our Commonwealth, I have become the first Black Kentuckian to receive the Democratic nomination for US Senate. My opponent, the very person who compared expanded health care to slavery. The person who said he would have opposed the Civil Rights Act. The person who single-handedly blocked an anti-lynching act from being federal law. The choice couldn't be clearer. Do we move forward together? Or do we let politicians like Rand Paul forever hold us back and drive us apart? In November, we will choose healing. We will choose Kentucky.
So I can't say for sure. I don't believe that I've ever seen a politician posing with a literal noose around their neck to make clear how serious this is historically and references the bill there, which we'll talk about. He tweeted with this ad, lynching is a tool of terror. It was used to kill hopes for freedom. In Kentucky, it was used to kill 3 of my uncles. The choice is clear in this election. Jayar, what did you think about that?
Hey, so primary night when you were out of town, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to jump in because that was the night that Booker did win. I'm sorry, yeah, he did win that primary, and we asked him, so how are you gonna approach this? Like, and he's like, well, listen, we're gonna go after Rand Paul. We're gonna name names and talk about who he is and what he's about. And I was like, man, I feel like I didn't say this, but I was thinking, I said, politicians always do that, or politicians always say that, or candidates, especially coming up against an incumbent, say he's got a record that we're gonna attack and we're gonna point out all of his wrongs and really connect him to it. I said, but that's kind of normal. This is not normal. And this is directly showing the implications behind what you say flippantly, because we hear it all the time. People like to compare folks to Nazis, or we like to say, hey, get off, the Democratic Party's got you on this plantation. They're lynching us in this. And they don't connect what those things really mean and how they think it's ancient history, just because they never really paid attention to what those things mean and how our history really does connect to that. It's part of why we don't like to teach that history to folks, because they might have those ugly scenes and reasons behind those ugly scenes in the forefront of their heads every time a politician says something like what Rand Paul likes to say. And it's not just Rand Paul, but considering Booker's running against him here, that's why. Point out that the things you say mean something. They evoke a certain feeling in certain people. So when you say, these black folks, black folks have been duped by the Democratic Party to believe that they've got their best interests at heart. Yeah, the Democratic Party does ignore black folks, even though they say that they do things for them. But when you start saying things like the lynching and then you're on the plantation, hey, that's real stuff. And that's stuff that people, your ancestors and people that are connected to your political ideologies, pushed for, made legal, and actually committed. So please keep my ancestors' names out your mouth. I'm glad he's doing this.
I am too. He's getting attacked. Definitely. Like people are already spreading it, on social media. He's definitely gonna get attacked by the other side. A lot of people are drawing comparisons to, as you'll see in this tweet, this ad breaks through in the same way that Gary Chambers ads, one where he burned a Confederate flag, one where he smoked marijuana. Those were both very powerful, great imagery. I love those ads. I would say, I feel like Booker one-upped him in terms of this is fairly shocking.
It threw me off.
I like this. This is what's up. What's up?
Yeah, it threw me off, John. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, oh my God. It gets to your gut. And that's the point. I don't like seeing that. He had the noose around his head. I was like, don't do that, Charles. That's his decision, man. And it's gonna evoke feelings, and it's gonna make us think about what it is that we say and do and how we implement certain rules and legislate. Because it connects to this day. We like to separate the past from today. It's all the same place. And if we ignore it, we're gonna do it again. It's just the way it is. It's uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. So let's not act like this was just a simple, easy thing to see.
Yeah, and let's also not act like he's invoking something from a million years ago. He says it was used to kill 3 of my uncles, not great-great-grandfather. Uncle, and he's not that old. Like this is not that old. Anyway, look, some people are saying it's not a fair comparison because eventually Rand Paul did support a version of the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. Okay, but I looked into it. He thought that the original version was too lenient. It included too many things. He didn't like that. He wanted to be stronger by limiting the things that could count as a lynching. That doesn't sound stronger to me. And the comparison of healthcare to slavery, you can look up the comments. He did compare those two things. He said that if you have a right to healthcare, then I as a doctor am effectively a slave. This is totally fair for Charles Booker to criticize. Anyway, we're gonna be following that race. We've talked with Charles before, we will in the future. Really impressive ad there. Okay, anyway, that's unfortunately all the time we have for this first hour. So if you're listening on the linear platforms or on the podcast, we appreciate you joining us as always for Big News Wednesday. That said, on the other side, if you're on one of the other platforms, Twitch or YouTube, we do have a lot more to talk about. We're gonna be jumping into one of the craziest male Karens I've ever seen, the Trump dancing story, absolutely abhorrent, and more besides. So with that said, we're gonna take a couple-minute break, and we will see you on the other side. Matthew sent in a super chat to say, I love your rant, John. Can you imagine teachers and kids having access to a gun and then having a mental breakdown? I don't understand the more gun arguments. You don't understand the more gun arguments because you don't make money selling guns. It might make more sense to you if you were a millionaire because you'd sold arms to a lot of people. It's a weird thing about language. Isn't it weird that we call them the gun manufacturers rather than like arms dealers? In other countries, they'd be arms dealers, but they're They're gun manufacturers. They're companies. They used to sell revolvers back in cowboy days. No, they sold the most deadly weapons that they could. That they sold the most deadly weapons that they were legally allowed at every point in American history. That's what they did. Because the goal was, a lot of people would really like to be able to kill people, and we want to produce something that's gonna make them salivate. Natural Born Keeler's been here for 12 months as well, says thank you for your work and much love to the whole team of TYT from Germany. Thank you, much appreciated.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.